Joining us this morning, Sree Sreenivasan, a former chief digital officer of New York City. Sree, it's great to have you here at Post 9. We should mention the president has signed the $1.5 trillion tax bill into law. We will see that in just a few moments on some tape playback, so keep that in mind. Dow's down 29. Bitcoin's a big story, tanking after hitting a record high on Sunday. From the peak, recent peak at least, Bitcoin has lost about 121 billion of its total market value in less than a week, although, Mike, you say, along with plenty of others, that comparing market cap in this instrument to other things isn't necessarily smart.
Just a snapshot of the outstanding plus the last price somebody bought a sliver of it for. So clearly, you wouldn't want to say that that much value was actually wiped out. You didn't exchange that many dollars for that much that is now lost, but still a big number, big decline.
Right. I got to know where you're coming from on Bitcoin right now.
Well, it's one of those things where people are not sure where things are going, and I just tweeted someone who said that everybody's talking about Bitcoin the way they in the world of media they're pivoting to video, and now everyone's thinking about Bitcoin, blockchain. I'm not sure people know where this will all end up, but people have to pay attention to this.
Are you a fan of the underlying technology? We have this discussion all the time, Bitcoin aside.
Yeah, I think the idea that there are new ways in which secure cryptocurrency can be available on a wide scale, I think that will make a difference.
How long until we start seeing that in like concrete terms?
That's
practical
the question.
use.
That's the question. And some people are using it in a very practical way already, but this is not something that the layperson, I think, should be jumping into.
Yeah, and certainly just to sort of jump on that, we're seeing it in the trucking industry. There's actually a growing consortium in transportation, including companies like UPS that are looking to do blockchain in trucking. So I think certainly in 2018, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But given the move we have seen in Bitcoin and some of these other cryptocurrencies just in the last couple of days, we've heard experts say for weeks now that anything that can move this high, this fast, can move down just as fast. I mean, are we going down to zero with Bitcoin?
I don't think zero is what people should worry about, but the way it's fallen shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because you've got all kinds of people just jumping on the bandwagon right now instead of thinking about this as part of their portfolio in a serious way.
The common distinction people want to make is between the underlying blockchain technology, that kind of software process and protocol, right? And this as a currency or an asset, whatever Bitcoin is. The issue, though, is that the Bitcoin on some level is the raw material of the blockchain, right? The blockchain doesn't get built unless people are incentivized to own Bitcoin. So how do you disentangle those two things?
And I think that's, you've kind of identified the key problem there. Part of it is people making sure that they are not confusing those two things. And it's a chicken and egg problem that it doesn't get built till that happens. So I think you're going to see major players take a stance, and when they do, things will start to move.
You think it's healthy that institutions like Goldman start trading desks?
Yeah, let's tell them about that. That was kind of amazing to see that they're doing that.
Reports out of Bloomberg that they're working on doing something by the summertime. We'll see. But it's hard to resist the interest of clients, right?
That's right.
If they want to be served.
Yep. I think if they call and say, we want to know how this fits into everything we're investing in, you've got to, as a major player, have at least a way to show them that you care. Otherwise, there's going to be more nimble players who will come along and take your clients away.
Not to mention the fact that you have so much volatility in these contracts, and if you're a trader, that's probably really attractive right now. But just how much is the move and sort of the focus on Bitcoin overshadowing some of these other cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency platforms like Ethereum? I mean, I hear in terms of the Bitcoin technology that could potentially have one of the biggest opportunities out there.
There are many others other than Bitcoin, but people are focused on Bitcoin. I think we'll see the evolution this year, and the way in which people will come back to figuring out the fundamentals and what makes sense will be key.
We'll keep our eye on at least today's price action. Meanwhile, Alphabet has news announcing that Eric Schmidt stepping down as executive chairman. He will assume the role of technical advisor as of the next board meeting in January and will remain a board member. A lot's been written not just about why he may be leaving now, but sort of what he brought to Google in the very early days, Sree.
When he joined Google, it was a relatively small company. It had a few hundred employees and wasn't the giant company it is today. He was brought to be the adult in the room, and I'm a fan of Eric's. I've gotten to know him a little bit because he cared about two things. He cares about two things that I care about. He was involved in the journalism world, media world, a big supporter of journalism, and in the art world. We brought him, when I worked as the chief digital officer of the Metropolitan Museum, we brought him to the Met, and he gave us in one afternoon so many ideas about the future of culture. And I think that's the kind of broad mind that he has. He's also interested in politics, and especially democratic politics. So he's not really run the company on a day-to-day basis in a long time. So it made sense for him to move on. I'd be fascinated to see what he does next. And that's a picture of me with my colleagues at the Met, and there he was talking to us.
Temple of Denver,
yeah,
nice.
The Temple of Denver, yeah, that's right.
It's been quite a transition for Google from the adult in the room to, I mean, just earlier this year, Google was fined, what, $2.7 billion in Europe for abusing its internet search monopoly. I mean, talk about a major transformation. But in terms of that culture, you've got some reports surfacing from the New York Times and others that potentially he's not necessarily the person who should be the figurehead of Google anymore because of quote unquote womanizing and potentially reportedly being separated from his wife, et cetera. Do you think there's any meat to that?
Well, I don't know about that part of the story, but I would say that he has been someone who made such a difference in the company. You cannot underestimate what he did for not just the company, but also the culture around Silicon Valley and that kind of leadership. And I think you have every company following Google after they brought him on to see what a difference it makes that founders have someone who is an experienced, wise person in addition to being a hotshot, helping the founders make a kind of the next step.
He didn't hold a position where you have to find a direct replacement, obviously. Right. But does Google at this stage need somebody out there that can be the more ambassador to the rest of the world, to regulators and everybody else? I mean, he was there from zero to $750 billion in market value.
Not
and yet
bad,
still
right?
People will say it's a one-product company, and there's some vulnerabilities to that one product.
But they are involved in so many things, and of course, Google itself has got a great leader in Sundar Pichai. But what about the other things that they're doing? They're involved in multiple moonshots, and they're thinking about everything from driverless cars. They're involved in driverless cars to other things. And having someone who can talk to Washington and talk to European leaders is important. And someone who isn't just heads down, only working on the products the way Sundar is, or the way that the others within Google and the founders are busy doing their own thing. But I think it's the wise man in the room, wise woman in the room who can bring people together and isn't polarizing will be useful in a company the size of Google.
Well, to Mike's point, though, a lot of people argue that they're going to need somebody to be the face that Schmidt was regarding European regulations and heat on Capitol Hill. I mean, I remember when they opened their first lobbying office, that was a big deal.
It was.
But that might not be. This is probably the most critical time for an office like that going into 18.
Absolutely. With everything that's coming down the pike in terms of scrutiny by regulators, it's important that you have someone who people trust and who can be the face of the company. And I'm sure they'll find somebody, maybe there's somebody inside that we don't know about, but most likely it will have to be an outsider.
Just out of curiosity, you're former chief digital officer in New York City. So you have an inside look at tech here in one of the greatest cities in the world.
Greatest city.
And then when we're talking about Google, I mean, one of the initiatives, sort of this idea of smart cities. And now the expectation is lawmakers next year are going to start focusing on infrastructure. Do you think 2018 is the year of the smart city actually taking root?
We're seeing that already in so many places. And in New York, Sidewalk Labs, which is part of the Alphabet family, has helped build these kiosks. If you go all over New York, these 9-foot-tall kiosks that give free Wi-Fi and data that people can use to kind of improve their lives. You know, they replaced all the phone booths in New York. That used to be a thing, payphone booths with these towers. So we are seeing in many, many cities the importance of infrastructure. And this is something that we had hoped the federal government would pay more attention to. And, you know, there was talks of a $1 trillion infrastructure deal, and that didn't, we're still waiting for that.
We are waiting, but might be getting closer.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.